I used to think Smith Rock was my church. The basalt looks like a rib cage lifted toward the sky, the river whispering like a litany you can only hear if you stand still. That morning I stood on the overlook with my hands around a little green cloth notebook, my moss ledger, and let the air steady me. If anyone ever asks why I write everything down, it's because sometimes staying alive is just a set of steps you do in order. The night before, Ethan and Kayla came by with cinnamon rolls and their best smiles. "We should do a hike, Mom," Ethan said, bouncing his knee like he did when he was little and wanted something. "A kind of early anniversary thing for you and Dad. Fresh air, good photos. It'll be fun." Kayla set a pastel folder on my table as gently as if it were a vase. "Also, and only if you're comfortable, there are a couple healthcare forms and a simple power of attorney we could fill out ahead of time. Purely practical. If anything ever happens, we can handle small things for you so you don't have to worry." I wish the word practical didn't feel like a pair of hands pushing between my shoulder blades. I smiled the way nurses smile when a patient says they feel fine and you can hear the siren behind the word. "Let's talk after the hike," I said. "No rush." After they left, I rinsed the plates, wiped the counter, and made tea I didn't drink. Years in the ICU taught me what panic sounds like from the inside. It's usually very polite. I opened the moss ledger to a clean page and wrote the date, the time, and the exact words that had bothered me. Then I pulled a small lapel mic from the drawer where we keep batteries and rubber bands. I used it once to record interviews for a hospital safety project. It still worked. I clipped it inside my fleece and listened for the tiniest click, like a heartbeat finding rhythm again. Abby texted just as I was turning off the kitchen light. "Did you authorize view only online for Ethan last week? Looks like someone tried to expand it to transactions today." I blocked it. "Call me." I stared at the message until the screen dimmed and my reflection floated there. I look like my mother when I'm worried, that soft mouth set stubborn. I typed back, "No, thank you. Let's talk tomorrow." When I finally slept, it was shallow and loud, like breathing near the surface of cold water. Now, on the rock, the day was honest and bright. The air smelled like sun on rope. Ethan waved from the trail junction with a map he didn't need. Kayla had her new camera, the strap crossed over her chest like a sash. They looked like a brochure, capable, cheerful, the family who hikes together. I felt my phone buzz with an early message from Abby. "Call when you can," and slid it back into my pocket. "You ready for your big adventure?" Ethan asked. He kissed my cheek and squeezed my shoulder too long. It's funny what you remember in moments like that. A boy with scabbed knees selling lemonade, a teenager slamming the door, a man who won't meet your eyes when the check arrives. "I'm ready," I said, and I was just not in the way he meant. We started up the trail. Kayla pointed out a hawk circling and I nodded, the way you nod at pretty things when you're counting exits. My husband Mark walked beside me, quiet, saving his breath for the inclines. He trusts the world more than I do. I love that about him. I also know it's why I carry the list and he carries the snacks. At the first lookout, Kayla touched my arm. "Let me get one of you two with the river behind. Step back a hair perfect." She lifted the camera, the sun threw a flare across the lens. Somewhere under my fleece, the mic hummed like a secret I was finally ready to keep. I glanced at Ethan. He was studying our feet, not our faces. That's when the calm settled in, the ICU kind that arrives when chaos thinks it has the room. I pressed my thumb to the spine of the moss ledger in my pocket and let the page I'd written last night steady me. "Practical," I wrote, "equals pressure with a smile." I wish I could tell you I wasn't afraid. I was. But fear is just a loud room. Procedure is the door. I said yes to the hike, just not unarmed. The house always smells like cedar when the heat kicks on. It's a small thing, but it makes the rooms feel honest. That morning I walked my usual circle: sink, table, hallway, back to the kitchen like a nurse at change of shift, taking silent inventory. The pastel folder Kayla had left sat where I'd put it, lined up with the grain of the wood, as if neatness could make it harmless. Mark was in the garage, humming over a squeaky cooler. He asked if I wanted the blue trekking poles or the black ones. I told him blue and tried to keep my voice even, as if color was the only decision that mattered today. A knock at the back door saved me from opening the folder. Mr. Ruiz stood on the step in his quilted jacket, the one with the elbows worn shiny. He used to do loan signings and notarize wills for half the neighborhood back when the bank still felt like a place with people in it. He brought tamales wrapped in a towel and a tin of cinnamon cookies like he does when it's cold. "You look like you slept with one eye open," he said, studying my face the way old men read weather. "Practice," I told him. "ICU taught me." He chuckled and set the food down. Then, almost as an afterthought, he pulled a little zip pouch from his pocket and set it beside the cookies. Inside was an old notary stamp and a magnifier. "You know how to tell a nervous signature from a dishonest one?" he asked. "I know how my hand shakes when I'm scared." I tried to smile. "Nervous goes shaky on the downstrokes," he said, making a motion in the air. "Dishonest presses hard on the flourish. You'll feel the bruise in the paper." He tapped the pastel folder with one fingertip, gentle but not timid. "Best way not to worry about it is not to sign at all until your banker friend reads every page." I didn't tell him about Abby's late-night text, or the way the word "view only" had turned into transactions without me. I just nodded and reached for the drawer where we keep rubber bands and takeout menus and the little stack of sticky notes I use to label leftovers. I wrote in block letters, "No signature without Abby." I stuck it to the folder like a warning label. Kayla came 10 minutes later, cheeks pink from the air, hair braided neat. She held a bakery box with one hand and, with the other, a clear plastic sleeve of forms. "Just health stuff," she said lightly, "and a simple springing power of attorney so you don't have to chase paperwork if there's ever an emergency. We can fill in the blanks after the hike only if you want." Springing. The word made me think of a trap, not a safety net. "Let's enjoy the morning first," I said. "I'm better at forms when the coffee's worn off." She laughed, like I'd told a joke. Her eyes flicked to the sticky note. People underestimate how much mothers notice. After she left to move the car, I opened the folder just enough to see the headings. Healthcare Proxy, Durable Power of Attorney, Beneficiary Designation Addendum. There were signature lines flagged with cheerful arrows. Blank spaces are hungry. They ask for names and dates and the part of you that wants to be agreeable. I closed the folder and slid it under the little wire basket where we keep mail and coupons, the place where decisions go to cool. On the counter, beside Mr. Ruiz's magnifier, the Moss ledger lay open to last night's entry. I added a line about the forms, the colors of the flags, the exact phrasing Kayla had used. Then, because old habits keep you steady, I wrote down a memory I hadn't let myself write before. Ethan at 19, red-eyed, asking to borrow the card for textbooks. The call a week later from the fraud department about concert tickets and a flight to Phoenix. Me paying it quietly because I believed that was what love did. Me telling myself he would learn. Love did teach him, just not what I meant. Mark came in, shook the chill from his arms, pressed his nose to my hair. "Blue poles are in the trunk," he said. "I put extra water." "You okay?" "I will be," I said, and I meant it more than I expected. I picked up a pen and uncapped it. The weight felt good in my hand, precise, familiar. I hovered over the first form long enough to hear my pulse in my ear. Then I capped the pen and set it down. Blank paper always wants black ink. Today, it's not getting mine. Abby called while I was tying my boots. She doesn't waste words when she's in banker mode. "Heads up," she said. "Somebody tried to add Ethan as a transfer on death beneficiary on your savings. It didn't go through. I blocked the request and flagged the profile. Did you authorize anything like that?" Castor. I sat down on the bench by the door because my knees suddenly felt unreliable. "No, absolutely not." "Okay. Two-factor is solid, but someone used a device already recognized on your login. Change your password after the hike. And Nora, don't sign a thing today. If they ask, blame me." I could hear paper sliding, a keyboard, her breath steady. It relaxed me the way a heart monitor settling does. "Thank you," I said. "Coffee on me forever." "Make it a muffin and send me a copy of any forms," she said, softer. "I've got you." I ended the call and stood there a minute with my hands on my hips like I was catching my breath after a long hallway. When I turned, Ethan was at the archway, watching me. "Everything okay?" he asked, voice light. eyebrows up in that innocent way that always made me want to believe him. "Bank stuff," I said. "Right," he said, nodding too quickly. "Look, Mom, if this is about us helping, sometimes you make me feel like a thief just for trying." There it was, the flip. The old trick where concern becomes accusation and you end up apologizing for having a spine. "I didn't say that," I answered, keeping my tone even. "I said I'll handle the bank." Kayla stepped around him with her camera bag. "We're on your side, Nora. We just want things to be simple for you if something happens. Nobody's trying to take anything." She smiled like a nurse, giving a shot to a child, dimples and promise. "Let us be helpful." I let the silence sit between us long enough to grow edges. "We're leaving in 10 minutes, I said. "Mark's in the car." They went outside. I opened the moss ledger on the entry table and wrote in block letters at the top of the page. 3. C. Calm. Collect. Confirm. Under it, I wrote 3 simple sentences I could stick to, even if my pulse went sideways. I will keep my voice low. I will gather facts on paper. I will verify before I agree. It felt stupidly small and also like armor. My phone buzzed again. A different tone, Mia from the Park Service. "We met last year at a community first aid class after I corrected a trainer who skipped the part about scene safety. She'd laughed and told me to come teach. Now her text said, 'On shift at Smith Rock. Swing by the ranger desk before your loop. I'll mark an easy route for your husband. And wear hats, winds up.'" I smiled for the first time that morning. People like Mia make the world feel less random. Out by the car, the air had that high desert clarity that makes colors look truer than they are. Mark handed me a thermos. "You get your bank friend?" he asked. "She's watching our backs," I said. Ethan leaned against the trunk, shaking a packet of trail mix into his hand. "You know, if we had some access, we could pay a couple bills for you guys and save you the hassle." He looked at Kayla like they were passing a ball back and forth. "Little things. Honey," Kayla said to me with that soft, minted voice. "It would mean we could answer calls, schedule, keep things smooth. No big decisions." "I'm fine handling my own little things," I said, and I heard the steel in it even if they pretended not to. We drove in a raft of quiet. I traced the raised stitches on the steering wheel cover and let the rhythm slow my thoughts. It's amazing how conflict shrinks when you give yourself a checklist. Calm, collect, confirm. Like washing your hands the same way every time so you don't bring infection from one room to the next. At the ranger station, Mia was behind the counter in a windbreaker, hair tucked up under a cap. "Nora?" she said, bright, then lower. "You okay?" "Define okay," I said, and she grinned like a good sister. She pulled out a laminated map and a dry erase pen. "Stay off the exposed spur today, it's gusty. Take the river loop and cut up at the switchbacks by the junipers. Plenty of views without the needless drama." She glanced at Ethan and Kayla and switched to cheerful public voice. "If anyone's new to the area, please mind the edge. Rock gives no warnings." "Ever." Kayla laughed as if it were a friendly slogan. Ethan smiled too hard at the map. Back at the car, I clicked my lapel mic on and whispered levels into my scarf, the way a person might murmur a prayer. The tiny thrum answered. I tucked the moss ledger into my jacket, feeling the spine press to my palm. "If you really care about us," I said to nobody in particular, and everyone at once, "you won't mind me double-checking." As if the day wanted to test me, my phone buzzed with a new alert. Small, forgettable investment app. A fund I barely touch. The notification preview read, "Unusual login attempt detected." I let the screen go dark and slid the phone away. Calm, collect, confirm. Then we started up the trail. Smith Rock always looks like it's holding its breath. The walls rise up in that impossible way, and the river threads around the base like someone sewing it to the earth so it won't float off. The wind was up, Mia was right, and it lifted the little hairs along my jaw the way a nurse brushes your skin before a shot. I felt the lapel mic under my scarf, a small weight, steady as a pulse. We parked near the junipers. Mia had circled a route on the laminated map river loop. Switchbacks, good views, zero drama. Ethan glanced at it for exactly 1 second, and then pointed toward the path that runs closer to the drop. "Faster this way," he said, like speed had ever been my spiritual gift. Kayla slid her camera strap across her body, adjusting it so the lens rested at her ribs. "Light's gorgeous," she chirped, the word frosty in the air. "If we get up a bit, you two will glow." She meant Mark and me. It sounded like a compliment and a plan. Mark squeezed my hand and let go to tighten his laces. "We can take it slow," he said. Always the reasonable one. "Slow is fine," Ethan answered, but he had already started up the steeper trail, the one that hugged the open edge longer than I liked. It's funny how hiking conversations are shaped by breath. Everybody sounds nicer between gulps. The wind pushed little grains of sand across the path. My boots scuffed, and I caught myself on a sun-warmed rock, palm flat. I thought about hand-washing at the hospital. The exact sequence, the places people miss. Calm, collect, confirm. My brain loves a procedure when the rest of me wants to bolt. Keep a respectful distance from the edge. I heard behind us in Mia's bright ranger voice to another group. Not to us, not directly, but the sentence slipped under my jacket anyway and stayed. We rounded a bend where the view opened like a held curtain. The river flashed green. Someone had wedged a little stack of stones near the lip, the kind of cairn that makes a picture look adventurous and makes rescuers tired. Kayla's camera clicked a few test shots. Ethan scanned the ledge the way my son scans a menu, planning the order before he sees the prices. "Okay," Kayla said, cheerful. "Let's get the money shot before the wind gets rude. Nora, Mark, stand here. Just a tiny step back so I get all the river." Tiny step. That's the phrase people use when they want something big to feel small. I touched the spine of the moss ledger through my jacket, just to feel it there, a straight line under my fingers, the way a guardrail shows up in the dark a second before you need it. The mic picked up the wind and gave it a soft hiss in my ear, or maybe that was just my own blood. Who can tell? Either way, the sound made me breathe out slower. "Is this far enough?" I asked, planting my heel and rolling my weight forward, not back. You learn your body's edges after 50, what it can do, what it shouldn't, what it refuses on principle. Ethan came up behind us, too close for the width of the trail, smiling that wide, good son smile. "Little more," he said. His hand hovered near my elbow, not touching, but there like a shadow that wanted a job. Mark shifted beside me. I could hear the grit under his boot. He's solid as fence post wood, but even fence posts lean if the soil gives. "I'm good here," he said, mild as ever. Kayla laughed, a bright bell sound. "Don't be scared," she said, and the word landed like a dare dressed as comfort. "I promise I won't let you fall. Promises are light things until gravity gets a vote." I smiled into the camera because sometimes you smile to keep your face from telling on you. The wind tugged at the brim of my hat. I slid my heel half an inch forward, a tiny rebellion, the kind that no one notices until later. "Kayla," I said, like a mother says a name when she's reminding herself to stay kind. "This is my last step." "Anyone." She lowered the camera for a second and looked at me. Really looked. Something flickered, quick as a blink, then vanished under the gloss. "Sure," she said sweetly, raising the lens. "Hold that." Behind us, Ethan shifted his weight. A rock skittered. I didn't turn. If you've ever waited out an arrhythmia, you know the discipline of stillness, the way you can listen a rhythm back into behaving. Calm, collect, confirm. I let the words sit in my cheek like a peppermint, cooling me from the inside out. "Okay," Kayla breathed, and I heard it more than I saw it, her voice tilting toward the kind of picture that wants a story to go with it. Then, softer, intended for Ethan, not for me, the mic catching what courtesy thought it had hidden. Just a nudge of space, perfect. Space, not push, not shove. Space. Language is so careful when it plans to do something it shouldn't. I pressed my thumb harder against the ledger's edge. I felt the thread under the cloth cover, the little ridge where the binding met the page. My heartbeat settled into it like it had found a metronome. From the river below came a burst of sound, somebody whooping at the cold, life going on in all its oblivious ways. I pictured Abby's text, the sticky note on the pastel folder, Mr. Ruiz's magnifier ring catching light on my table. My world is full of small things that add up to a no. I held my ground. Sometimes, the only difference between a pretty picture and an obituary is the direction your next half-inch goes. I don't remember the exact moment when the sky got too big. It happens fast out there. 1 second you're measuring your breath, the next the horizon feels like it's leaning over your shoulder. Kayla lowered her camera, tilted her head and said, "Let's do one just for us. Phones are kinder to faces." She said it like she was gifting me something, like this was intimacy and not leverage. Ethan stepped in close, his arm looping behind my back the way a son hugs his mother when someone else is watching. "Selfie time," he laughed and lifted his phone. He angled us so the river made a neat shiny line at our heels. His hand found my wrist, not my shoulder, and squeezed like he was checking a pulse. "Mom, trust me," he said, bright and easy, and tugged. You know the odd little dance your body does when the ground argues with you? Heel, toe, panic. My boot slid on a scatter of grit, like someone had dumped a salt shaker across the rock. For an instant, I saw nothing but air, that hot, empty feeling that lives behind your eyes when you miss a step in the dark. My stomach dropped so sharply I could taste metal. Then my left hand found the basalt, palm down, skin to sun-warm stone, and I held. The world slowed to the tempo of my heart. Lub, dub, don't you dare. "Whoa!" Kayla yelped, high and theatrical, and it bounced off the wall like a cue. "They slipped!" The word was out of her mouth before I had finished catching myself. It was too fast, too eager, like the line had been rehearsed. I felt the lapel mic buzz faintly with my breath and realized I had been holding it. I let the air out slow, like easing a patient off a ventilator, and found my voice. "I'm okay," I said. "Mark?" And then Mark's boots skidded. It wasn't dramatic, no flail, no gasp, but he'd been bracing his weight to steady me, and the rock under him betrayed that trust just enough. He dropped a step, then another, onto a narrow shelf maybe 4 feet down. Hard enough that he grunted and grabbed his side, soft enough that he didn't disappear. Time can be loud when it wants to be. I heard the wind, the smacking pop of Kayla's lens cap against her camera, Ethan's breath break into little pieces, my own name in his mouth, like a question he didn't mean. Somewhere behind us, a whistle split the air, one long, clean note that went straight through my bones. "Mia." That whistle is what the ER code bell is to nurses, a call that turns fear into muscle memory. "Don't move," I said, automatically, voice calm because I decided it so. "Mark, talk to me." "Is it my Sprechtivound?" "I'm here," he answered, thin but steady. "Ribs don't love me." "Good," I said, because movement and voice are twin gifts. "I love you enough for both of us." I slid to a sit, boots braced, then inched down to the shelf on my backside, the way you do when you remember your dignity is not worth your hip. I put my hand on Mark's shoulder and felt the heat of him through his jacket. He was pale around the mouth. I know that look. Pain is a color only nurses see. "Don't try to help," I told Ethan without looking up. "I've got him. Find stable ground. Call it in." "We should carry him," Kayla said too quickly. "We can make it up." "Thanks for watching. If you touch him, I will remove your hand," I said, so gently it almost sounded like a lullaby. "No movement until we know what we're moving." The whistle sounded again, closer now, followed by Mia's voice, brisk, bright, official. "Rangers on approach. Everyone stay put. Who's hurt?" "Here," I called back, and felt something in me unclench. Not safety, not yet, but a path to it. Ethan's face was a study in confusion and performance. He hovered near the edge of usefulness, looking like a man who had arrived at an exam for the wrong class. "It was slick," he told the air. "They just slipped." "Rehearsed," I thought again. "Practice the way you practice how you'll tell yourself the story later." "Breathe," I murmured to Mark, counting with him under my breath because numbers make pain smaller. "Into 4, out to 6. The mic was close enough to catch it. I hoped it caught everything. I bent my head until my mouth was close to my scarf and said a sentence I'd never said out loud in my life. "Play normal." It wasn't a lie. The normal I meant was the kind that follows protocol and keeps its eyes open. Mia arrived first, boots sure, body low, like she'd married the rock years ago and it still adored her. She knelt at the edge of our shelf and gave me a look that asked a paragraph and accepted my nod as an answer. "Hi, Mark," she said, cheerful in the professional way that keeps people from falling apart. "I'm Mia. On a scale of 1 to 10, how bad are you pretending this is?" 7 pretending 4, he admitted, a little breathless. Honesty, she said, approving. To me, we're getting a litter. EMS is en route. You doing ABCs? Airway, breathing, circulation good, I said. Guarding on the left, no obvious deformity. He took weight on the shelf, not the fall. Copy, she said. She glanced up at Ethan and Kayla and raised her voice. You two back from the edge. Now. Hands out of pockets. Kayla obeyed so fast she looked like a clip on 2 times speed. Ethan did a little half-shuffle like he wanted to look cooperative without feeling it. It was so sudden, Kayla offered, voice tremulous in a way I didn't buy. He just, save the narrative, Mia said without heat. We'll need it later. I wanted to hug her for those 4 words. Save the narrative. It's the kind of sentence that respects the future. While we waited minutes that stretched into their full, tall selves, I did what I always do. Small tasks that build a floor. I tugged Mark's hat lower to shade his eyes. I took his pulse and counted out loud to 20 so he could lean on the rhythm. I asked him to wiggle toes, to squeeze my fingers, to tell me his pain with silly numbers so we both had something to do. I looked at his chest for the asymmetry that means danger and didn't see it. I listened to his breath and heard the grit in it but not the rattle I fear. Above us, Ethan paced a little, then stopped. If we had access, he muttered to no one, we could handle the bills while you're stuck here. The kind of sentence you throw at a situation, hoping it will stick to a different one. The mic nestled under my scarf like a friend with perfect recall. Sirens came thin and distant, then round and full. A second ranger appeared with coiled rope, then a third with a medical pack. I could feel the day right itself like a coin that's done wobbling. Okay, Mia said businesslike. We're going to stabilize you, Mark, then bring you up nice and slow. Nora, you staying with him? Try to move me, I said, and she grinned. Ethan cleared his throat. Do you need me to, sign anything? Not a damn thing, Mia said pleasantly. You just breathe air and take orders. The laugh died in my throat before it could escape. I pressed my thumb to the moss ledger in my pocket, feeling the pleasant bite of the spine. Later, I would write this moment down. The words they chose, the words they didn't, the way the wind smelled like iron and juniper, and something that used to be fear. I'm not proud of this part, but I loved how calm I felt. Not because I'm brave, because procedure is a raft and I climbed on. They wanted a story about a simple slip. Fine. I was going to give them one with dates, with names, with the kind of details that make liars trip over their own good intentions. If they wanted an accident, I was going to hand them a report. Street Charles always smells like citrus wipes and warm plastic. It's the kind of smell that tells your body to lower its voice. They wheeled Mark through double doors that parted like they knew his name, and I walked beside the gurney with one hand on the rail and the other inside my jacket, pinning the moss ledger to my ribs like a second sternum. Dr. Park met us at the threshold, kind-eyed behind a face shield, the exact kind of calm I used to borrow during night shift. Hi, I'm Lewis, he said to Mark, already tracking the monitors with that split-attention ER doctors wear like a second set of hands. We'll keep you bored and safe. That's my plan today. Hi, 7 pretending 4, Mark told him, and Dr. Park smiled without moving any other part of his face. Honesty is efficient, he said, and I liked him instantly. They parked us in a room with a view of the hallway and the clock you can't ignore. Vitals, oxygen, a portable film, everything in the right order, like someone humming a song I still know the words to. I helped with the jacket, counted breaths out of habit, then stepped back because you only get to be one thing at a time, wife or nurse. Today I picked wife. Kayla slid in under the curtain as if it were an invitation and not a boundary. Her voice was low and soothing, the way people read meditation scripts. Nora, while we're waiting, it might make sense to put a healthcare proxy and a simple medical power of attorney in place, just so we don't have to chase signatures if they need something. Totally routine. I brought a template, she said, template like a casserole, comforting, portable, made with love. I pressed my tongue to my molars and let the word urgent run laps in my head until it got tired. I'm not signing anything today, I said evenly. If a form is important, it will still be important after I read it. Dr. Park returned with a nurse and a wheeled ultrasound. "We're checking for a pneumothorax," he told Mark, and then to me, a small nod that said, "I heard what was said without hearing it." The gel was cold. Mark winced and made a joke about sushi. When they stepped out again, Kayla tried a new door. "We could fill in everything but the signatures," she suggested, offering the packet like a bouquet. "Names, dates, addresses, save you time later. Just efficient." I opened the Moss ledger and turned to a fresh page. I wrote across the top, "Family Incident Log," in the square, careful letters I use when I don't want my hand to tremble. 10 lines, same as always: date, time, location, who's present, what's asked, exact words, how my body felt, what I answered, who I'll loop, follow-up, next step. Then I asked the questions I teach myself to ask, one at a time, like beads on a string. Who benefits from this form if I can't speak? Who drafted it, and who notarizes it? Is the notary independent or someone's friend with a stamp? What powers are included, and how are they revoked? Is there a sunset clause, or does it outlive the emergency? Who keeps the original, and where does it live? What's the smallest version of this that still does the job? What problem are we solving today that can't wait 72 hours? What's the risk if I do nothing right now? What's the lie this form tells about how much we care? I didn't say them like a lawyer. I said them like a woman who has seen what happens when signatures outrun sense. Kayla blinked, lashes fluttering, then set the packet on the counter as if it might catch a spark. "Hey," Abby said from the doorway, hair in a messy knot, 2 coffees in one hand, her weekend jacket in the other. "They let just anyone in here?" She grinned and handed me a cup, then nodded to Mark like he was a project she'd decided to fund personally. "You didn't have to come," I told her, grateful clear down to the soles of my feet. "I was nearby," she lied kindly, then lowered her voice. "Also, the name that popped up last week on Ethan's credit inquiry? Cascade Bridge Lending. It's not a bridge you want to stand on. Think hammered together interest, no railings, smiley website, angry contracts. Be careful if anyone says just temporary. Cascade Bridge Lending. CBL." The letters felt like a cold thing in my pocket. I wrote them in the log because ink is how I ask my future self to pay attention. Ethan arrived 2 beats after Abby, all concern and elbows. He looked past me at the monitor as if it would tell him where to place his face. "How's he doing?" he asked, and when I answered, "Stable," he nodded like he had ordered it. "While you're here," he added, "the way people add ketchup to a bill. I could call billing, set up auto-pay for anything coming in. You guys shouldn't have to fuss with all that. If we had access, we could make life easier. If we had access." He said it soft, almost to himself, the kind of sentence you practice until it sounds like love. Under my scarf, the mic warmed to his voice and kept it. "Thanks," I said, and let the word be friendly and inert. "We're fine." Abby lifted her coffee and sniffed the steam like a woman about to bless soup. "I'm happy to hop on any calls," she told me. "Also, if you get paperwork, text me first, even if it looks harmless, especially then." Dr. Park pushed in again with the ultrasound print and the tone that makes bad news walk backward. "No collapsed lung," he said. "A couple cracked ribs likely. We'll confirm with imaging. Pain control and patience. You'll sleep like a rotisserie chicken on your side for a while, Mark, but you'll be okay." Kayla's shoulders dropped in a trained relief. "Thank God," she breathed, then turned to me with that soft voice suggestion again. "Let's just prep the basics while we wait. It doesn't have to be official names and contacts so we're not scrambling." I thought of Mr. Ruiz tapping a finger to paper. "You'll feel the bruise in the page." I thought of Abby's text at midnight, of Mia's whistle still lodged like a note in my spine. I let my face be kind, and my words be a lock. "No signatures without Abby," I said. "No names without counsel. No access without need." The clock on the wall moved 1 minute, then another. Time is a good witness. It doesn't rush for anyone. I added to the family incident log. Kayla brought forms into ER room, suggested pre-filling. My body, jaw tight, shoulders floating. Response, deferred. Loop, Abby Bank, Dr. Park aware by presence. Next step, review after 72 hours with independent counsel. When you write a thing down, it becomes too heavy to carry in someone else's pocket. Out in the hallway, a transport tech laughed at something I couldn't hear. A volunteer rolled past with a cart of magazines no one reads. Life does this, it keeps acting like itself while you learn how to be new. I looked at Mark and let the relief settle all the way. Then I looked at the pastel packet while Kayla pretended not to watch me look at it. If a form shows up with the word urgent stamped anywhere at all, I told myself quietly, the only answer is, let me review. Hospitals get quieter at night, but they never get truly still. The parking lot hummed like a low ceiling fan, and the sodium lights painted everything the color of old honey. I stood between two maples that had lost most of their leaves and let the cold air rinse me out. Behind the glass, Mark slept the heavy, medicated sleep that makes you grateful for boring vital signs. I could see the arc of his shoulder under a warmed blanket. It anchored me. I've always been good at fixing things in the moment. It's the after that undoes me, the part where you decide what story to tell yourself so you can live with what you did. When Ethan was 19 and his eyes were raw from whatever he'd told himself was necessary, he asked to borrow my card for textbooks. A week later, the bank called about charges that sounded like a vacation I hadn't taken. I paid it and told nobody. I told myself I was saving him from consequences, protecting his future, keeping the peace. Peace didn't grow there. Secrecy did. Standing in that glow, I could finally say the sentence I'd ducked for years. I taught my son that I would absorb the blast. If he aimed for my love, it would cushion the hit. If he aimed for my guilt, it would open the door. I pulled the moss ledger from my jacket and balanced it on the hood of the car. My pen left a small bite in the paper, and that felt right. I wrote in letters straight enough to lean on, I will not trade peace for silence. I wrote it again, smaller, below the first line, like a promise has to fit two ways, loud enough to hear later, quiet enough to carry. The phone buzzed, and I almost didn't answer, because I knew I was soft enough that one wrong voice could push me back into old habits. It was Mr. Ruiz. I bake too much, he said, as if that were a crime. Tamales need homes. How's your fella? Prognosis, grumpy and healing, I said. He'll flirt with the X-ray tech tomorrow and pretend his ribs aren't in charge. Good, he said, satisfied. And you? I'm tired of being reasonable, I answered. I think I mistook reasonable for kind. He made that little, noise old men make when they've seen this movie. Kindness tells the truth, he said. Nice tries to get invited back. I laughed, a small, startled sound. I needed to hear that. He was quiet for a breath. Nora, he said, gentler. You know this, but I'm going to say it so your bones can hear it. No is a complete sentence. No needs, no footnotes. And no signature is not an accusation, it's a policy. Policy over panic, I said, mostly to myself. Exactly. And if anyone acts allergic to time, put them in the hallway of 72 hours and tell them to sit, he added, pleased with his own metaphor. If a form wilts under waiting, it was never a form. It was a trick. In Hell Stand It, we said goodnight like people who knew we were agreeing to something bigger than sleep. I slid the phone into my pocket and felt the lapel mic bump my knuckles. The battery light was a thin, stubborn blink. I unclipped it with numb fingers, opened the hatch, and swapped in a fresh battery from the little zip bag I keep next to spare Band-Aids. The old battery dropped into my palm, warm and used. I closed my fist around it and found myself thinking, you did your job. Thank you. The new one settled with a click that sounded like a decision. Reset. Not because I'm paranoid, because my memory deserves a witness. Inside, a volunteer pushed a cart of ginger ale past the window. A janitor walked the hall with that quick, efficient gait. I love purpose as a language. I could almost feel my old self, the one who measures chaos and talks it down the stairs, putting a hand on my shoulder and nodding. Good. Make a plan. Stop bargaining with outcomes. Stay with the steps. I opened to a fresh page and titled it like I was filing something precious. Identity shift. Underneath I wrote, Old rule, keep the peace at any cost. New rule, keep the record, then keep myself. Old habit, fix it quietly. New habit, name it, log it. Loop someone who isn't afraid of conflict. Old fear, if I draw a line, I'll lose my son. New truth, If I have no line, I lose myself and him, eventually, to his worst story. There's a grief in admitting you coached the wrong lesson, but there's relief too, like loosening a boot that's been rubbing raw. I let both feelings sit side by side until they stopped elbowing each other. I thought about Kayla's pastel packet and the cheerful arrows pointing at blank lines. I thought about Ethan's soft, "if we had access," like the sentence had been ironed flat and folded in a drawer for a special day. I thought about Abby's voice, calm as a metronome, and Mia's whistle, bright as a lighthouse. I made a small list of what I could control. The pen in my hand, the pace of my breath, the word no, the choice to wait. Before I closed the ledger, I added a final line underlined twice: no signatures, 72-hour review, independent counsel, everything in writing. A gust shook the last leaves from the maple, and they skittered across the asphalt like small animals changing their minds. I capped my pen and slid the ledger back into my jacket. The weight of it didn't feel like burden anymore. It felt like spine. When I looked up, the sky over Bend was clear enough to show the smear of stars you only notice if you let your eyes adjust. The universe doesn't care about our paperwork, but it does seem to reward people who stop pretending and start telling the truth. I touched the mic with 2 fingers, a small benediction, and whispered so quietly only I could hear it. Tomorrow, I'm going to say no, and I'm going to write it in ink that doesn't wash off. Detective Harper Cole looks like a man who reads the whole page before signing anything. Square shoulders, quiet voice, wedding ring that's seen more winters than I have patience. He met me in a small interview room on the 2nd floor, the kind with a table that pretends not to be bolted down. He set a digital recorder in the middle and asked me to start wherever the story began for me, not for anyone else. So I told him the ordinary parts: first coffee, the pastel folder, the hike plan said like a prayer, and watched his pen keep up. When I got to the ledge, to Ethan's hand on my wrist, and Kayla's, they slipped. His eyes didn't widen or narrow. He just pressed the tip of the pen harder, like he wanted the paper to remember. Mia came in halfway through with a folder still warm from the printer. "Field notes and stills," she said, sliding it over to Harper and then to me. The photos were unromantic angles and scale bars, boot prints tracked next to the edge, the pattern from Ethan's soles distinct as a fingerprint. She'd marked distance from the cairn, wind direction, scuff marks that pointed the wrong way if our bodies had simply drifted. "Plenty of views without the needless drama," she said under her breath, and I had to press my tongue to my teeth to keep from laughing. "Miss Whitfield," Harper said when I finished, "we'll need any recordings or notes you made, originals, timestamps intact." He said it like people say please when they've earned it already. I touched the moss ledger in my lap and nodded. "You'll have everything," I said. "I'm organized when I'm scared." He allowed himself a small hum. Organized is my love language. By the time I got back to Mark's room, the afternoon had drooped into that tired hospital beige. He was propped up and full of grumbles that told me his pain meds were at least honest. Abby leaned against the sink, scrolling her phone with a frown I recognized from the branch on audit days. "News for you," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "2 things. 1, the attempted transfer on death update hit again an hour ago. I killed it and locked the profile down to eyes only with verbal passphrases. 2, I dug into some metadata, and it looks like the request came from a device previously used for your small investment app. If you haven't logged in there lately, change that password tonight." "Done," I said, and wrote both items in the log because future me is forgetful and present me is done pretending she isn't. Abby hesitated, then held her screen out. "Also this. Public email template. Kayla sent this link to Ethan last week, estate readiness, 5 forms you need now. It's a blog that gives people just enough vocabulary to be dangerous. TOD, POA, beneficiary addendum, the whole buffet." She scrolled to the footer. "The site is generous with its advice and alter." My chest did that tight elastic thing, the one that happens right before you either cry or get very efficient. "Thank you," I said, and meant it with my whole day. Kayla picked that exact moment to slip back in, cheeks flushed like sincerity. "How's our guy?" she asked, and kissed the air an inch from Mark's forehead. Then, to me, with a nurse voice, she borrowed from TV. Nora, decisions stack up fast in hospitals. It might help if we go somewhere quiet and just jot down contact info and preferences. Doctors appreciate families who are prepared. She was trying to peel me away from witnesses, which was almost sweet. I'm comfortable deciding where people can hear me, I said. And we're not filling anything out, we're following a new policy. She blinked. Policy? 72-hour review, I said. Independent counsel, no signatures in crisis, no pre-filling, no access requests outside the bank with my banker on the call. Abby lifted a hand like she was in church. Amen. Kayla smiled like I'd told a charming story. Of course, we're all on the same page. This is just logistics. Then logistics can wait 3 days, I said. If they can't, they weren't logistics. Mark coughed a laugh that hurt him and still felt worth it. Kayla's eyes did a quick, calculating flick, left, right, the way you check for exits in a new restaurant, and then she waved a little and promised to come back later with soup. She forgot the packet on the counter. I didn't remind her. On my way to refill water, Ethan's voice reached me from the visitor alcove. It wasn't the voice he uses on me. It was the one he uses when he thinks he's alone with a problem he can out-talk. Low, urgent, frayed at the edges. Friday, he said into the phone. I heard you. I said I heard you. I'll have it by Friday. A pause, a flinch that lived in his shoulder, not his face. No, do not show up here. I'm telling you I'll fix it. We had a setback. He turned away when he saw me, which told me more than the words ever could. I kept walking like a woman going to get ice. Back in the room, I wrote Friday CBL next to the time and underlined it. Then I wrote a sentence that felt like opening a parachute. Deadlines make desperate people fast. Give them time, and they show you who they are. Harper texted while I was pretending to enjoy cafeteria pudding. Secure link, he wrote. Send copies of audio as soon as you can. I used the hospital Wi-Fi and watched the progress bar inch forward like a careful animal. When it finished, I felt that click inside the one that happens when responsibility lands where it belongs. At 6 on the dot, my phone chimed with the little bell I'd set myself years ago for medication reminders. The sound was bright in the quiet. I changed the label and set it to repeat 3 mornings. 72-hour hold. It felt ceremonial, like taping a boundary to the wall where everyone could see it. Abby sat on the edge of the visitor chair and folded one ankle over her knee. You know, she said, conversational, when people rush you and call it caring, it's always about them. I know, I said. I'm finally letting that knowing be useful. Outside the window, Ben did its early evening trick where the sky goes from nickel to violet in a single breath. I held Mark's hand and let the color happen. My pocket buzzed once more, Ethan again, pacing, promising, offering pieces of the future I hadn't put on the menu. Friday, I thought. Good. A deadline is just a clock with manners. It lets you plan. I closed the moss ledger and set it on the tray table, the cover soft and stubborn under my palm. If anyone's allergic to time, I said to no one and everyone, that's their diagnosis, not my prescription. Skylight Overlook sounds prettier than it is. It's a tidy turnout with a rail someone welded on a Tuesday and a plaque that no one reads. The wind came straight across the flats and lifted the hair at my temple like it was checking my temperature. I could see the river sliver and the lot below with its 3 cars pretending to be alone. I had the moss ledger in my jacket and the lapel mic under my scarf. The only thing I didn't have was patience for theater. Ethan and Kayla arrived 10 minutes late with the kind of smiles people put on for church and court. We shouldn't have ended the day like that, Ethan said, hands out, palms up, apology arranged on the plate. I'm sorry, Mom. Let's reset. 1 family photo, and then we make a plan together. Kayla softened her voice until it felt like lotion. No forms, no pressure, just a picture with the valley behind. We love you. That's the headline. He was now there's another problem stains be code. I let them hug me, because sometimes hugs are just pockets. My second phone, old, slim, magnetic case, slid into the open sleeve of her camera bag and settled there with the quiet click of a secret finding a shelf. The recorder on my jacket hummed at my throat like a throat clearing before testimony. Okay, I said. We can stand by the rail. The light was good in that unflattering way that shows you who you are. Kayla lifted her camera and laughed a small laugh that wanted company. Ethan angled us so the drop was over our shoulders, like risk makes people look interesting. We stood there, 4 people pretending to be the kind of family you see on cards that come with a coupon. "Before we start," I said, calm as a waiting room, "I want to read something into the air." I took out the Moss ledger and opened to the last page. Policy update. No POA, no TOD, no access. 72-hour review with independent counsel. If anyone asks for shortcuts, the answer is no. If anyone calls it urgent, the answer is still no. Ethan's smile thinned. "We hear you," he said. "We're not asking for power. We're asking for trust." "Trust isn't a signature," I answered. "It's a behavior I can predict." Kayla kept the camera pointed, but I saw her eyes move, quick, measuring distances that weren't on the map. "Let's just get the photo," she said brightly. "Lean back a hair so I get the whole valley." "Lean back a hair." "There's always a hair." I didn't move. The wind took a breath. Down in the lot, a door thudded. The world checked its watch. Kayla's bag vibrated my old phone, doing its little insect hum once, then again, like it was agreeing. Ethan cleared his throat. "We're all stressed," he said, too fast. "CBL doesn't care about your policies. They want their money on Friday." Kayla flicked him a look so sharp it could have trimmed a thread. "Ethan," she said, "sugar over granite. Not now." "Not when?" he snapped in a voice I recognized from his childhood, the one he used when the game wasn't going his way. "We're out of time. They said they come to the house if I don't pay." My chest didn't tighten. It opened. The truth does that sometimes expands the room so you can finally breathe. "Who is they?" I asked, gentle like I was taking blood from a vein. "Say their name for the record." He swallowed. "Cascade Bridge Lending," he said, the syllables flat, ashamed. "A guy named Deacon, he calls. He doesn't sound like a customer service department." Kayla lowered the camera. "We have a plan," she said quickly. "To him, not me. We stage a narrative that makes sense. Slip, grief, families do what they must. We can say they asked us to help. We can." "Stop," I said, and it wasn't loud, but it carried. "No more storyboarding my life." For a second, no one moved. A hawk tilted and corrected itself in the blue. "I'm not here to be cruel to you," I added, and I meant it. "I am here to keep all of us from the worst version of ourselves. That's what boundaries are. So here's the plan. You will not touch my accounts. You will not approach my bank. You will not introduce forms into emergency rooms like casseroles. If you need help, you will use your name and ask for it." Ethan tried a laugh, and it fell off the rail between us. "You think a speech helps? These people?" "What helps," I said, "is that I'm done keeping your secrets for you. What helps is evidence. And..." I took my phone out and tapped a message I'd drafted and redrafted until it fit like a glove, to Abby and Detective Cole Bundle A. Then I attached the audio file from the lapel mic, the photos from Mia's packet I'd scanned, and the page from my log where the letters CBL were underlined twice. I hit send. The little bar crept, and then turned clean blue. Somewhere across town, 2 people I trusted more than my impulses now knew what I knew. Kayla saw the movement, exactly the way a woman notices a stain on a white shirt. "What did you just do?" she asked, the sugar slipping. "Took the story out of our living room," I said. "Put it where adult stories belong. Heimsiction." Her face did a tender, terrible thing, anger fitted with surprise. "Nora, you don't have to make this ugly." "It's already ugly," I said. "The difference now is that it's documented." A car turned onto the Overlook Road, headlights slicing up the guardrail. The light washed over Ethan's face and made him look older than me in the way debt does. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't need to look to know who it was. He answered anyway. "Yeah?" he said, and tried to make it sound like he was 6 inches taller. A man's voice bled through tinny and mean. "Clock's up, Ethan." He flinched and stepped back like the words had weight. Kayla reached for him and then stopped herself, fingers hanging in the air with nothing to hold. She turned to me with a last try, the kind that hopes you'll rescue someone from their consequences. "Please, we can fix this. We can handle it." "I believe you can handle it," I said. I no longer believe I'm the handle. Down in the lot, a door slammed again, closer. The wind shifted cold and carried a smell I couldn't name. Metal, rain, the scent that tells you weather has decided on you. My old phone inside Kayla's bag buzzed a third time, like a bird knocking at a window. I closed the moss ledger and felt the soft spine give under my palm, patient as a shoulder. "If you truly love us," I said, "you'll stop asking us to disappear. And because I am still a mother," I added, "Friday doesn't have to be the day you lose everything. It can be the day you tell the truth to someone who can actually help you." No one spoke. Somewhere a crow laughed like it knew everything and found it funny. We stood there a moment longer, the four of us. Then I turned toward the steps, the kind that take you back to a parking lot and a phone with a progress bar already finished. Sometimes the most merciful thing you can do is make sure the record outlives the performance. Deacon looked like a man who'd learned manners from parking lots. He came up the path with two others, not hurrying, just arriving the way weather does inevitable. Borrowed smile, jacket that hid his shape more than it kept him warm. He clocked the rail, the drop, the distance between us like he was measuring a table for a tablecloth. "Ethan," he said, as if he were greeting a waiter he'd undertipped. "You kept me waiting." Ethan's mouth opened and closed twice. For a heartbeat, I saw the little boy who once hid under the porch when he broke a window. Then the man returned, the one who thinks he can outrun a deadline by talking faster. "We're handling it," he said. "You'll have it Friday." I said Friday. Deacon's eyes flicked to me, then to Kayla. He had a gift for looking bored and dangerous at the same time. "You must be Mom," he said, like the word had an invoice attached. "It's lovely when families rally." "Families don't rally around extortion," I said, and my voice surprised me by being almost gentle. "They rally around truth." He smiled without teeth. "Truth is just a receipt with good timing." Kayla stepped forward with that bright, field trip energy she wears when she's selling an idea. "We have forms," she told him, too quickly. "Todd, beneficiary addendum. All ready, she just needs to sign. We can liquidate the small accounts now and—" "We can what?" I asked, and didn't raise my voice, because sometimes quiet carries farther. "How do you know what accounts I have?" Her face flickered. Deacon watched her like a cat watches a curtain. "She reached out first," he said conversationally, almost delighted to be sharing. "Creative girl. Told us there was a second property, a little investment house that could stand in as collateral if paperwork aligned. Said you were sentimental, so she'd shepherd it. Secret house." There it was, the phrase I didn't know I was waiting for, landing with the weight of a lie that had been doing push-ups. "I never owned a second house," I said. "I barely keep up with the one that smells like cedar when the heat kicks on." Deacon shrugged one shoulder. "Signatures are flexible if your printer's friendly." He tipped his chin at Kayla. "Your wife was very organized." Ethan went a color I'd only seen on men about to faint. "Kayla?" His voice cracked where boys' voices crack. "You told me it was a bridge loan. You said—" "I said we'd fix it," she snapped, and the sweet varnish flaked right off. "I said we had options. You were already underwater. Somebody had to be proactive." She turned to me, jaw set the way people set it right before they're cruel. "We tried the easy way, Nora. We tried to get you to sign like a reasonable person. You made it hard." "I made it honest," I said. "There's a difference." He said. Down in the lot, a Ranger truck turned in, tires crunching gravel like a promise. Another car followed, unmarked, the kind that signals a story is about to have adult supervision. Deacon didn't look, but his neck did a small, animal thing, half swivel, half pretend not to. He shifted his weight. "Well," he said lightly, reaching for the tone a man uses at a barbecue as he unties a dog. "If the family can't pledge assets, we can require performance in other ways. Timelines get creative. Visits get frequent." "You will not visit my home," I said. "You will not visit any home I love. Thanks for watching." He started to laugh, but the sound didn't get to be born because a second whistle cut the air. Mia's short and declarative and Detective Harper's voice came in clear as good glass. Hands visible. "Stay exactly where you are." It shouldn't be satisfying to hear authority arrive. It was. Harper came up even and unruffled, Mia flanking, 2 deputies behind. He looked at Ethan first, then Kayla, then Deacon, as if he were reading street signs in order. "Deacon, is it?" Harper asked. "We've spoken to your office. You'll want to keep your counsel handy." "Miss Whitfield." He nodded to me. "Thank you for the materials. Please keep your distance." He turned to Kayla. "You contacted Cascade Bridge Lending 2 months ago," he said, not a question. "You provided draft documents listing a property that does not exist and proposed a quitclaim swap if family resistance slowed you down. You used a template you sent your husband from a public blog, which was ambitious." Kayla stared at him like he'd recited a poem she hadn't studied. Ethan made a wounded sound and tried to stand taller inside it. "She was trying to help," he said, weak, and the sentence withered in the wind. Harper's voice stayed even. "We have recordings of conversations indicating intent to manipulate medical paperwork in an emergency setting, initiate unauthorized beneficiary changes, and stage a narrative of accidental harm. There are also communications requesting expedited disbursement schedules in the event of parental death." He glanced at my scarf, at the place where the mic tucked into the fabric like a brooch. "The record is more thorough than most." Deacon finally showed some interest. "You wired me recordings?" he asked, half admiring, half offended. "I wired them to the people whose job is to stop you," I said. Harper didn't bother looking at Deacon. "Mr. Reyes," he said to one of the deputies, "please escort Mr. Deacon here back to his car and keep him there. He's not free to leave." The deputy moved like someone whose breakfast had been bland and whose day had looked boring until now. Deacon lifted both hands as if he were giving the air a rest. "Predatory lending isn't a crime," he said, almost amused. "It's a business model. Coercion is," Harper said. "So is fraud." He turned to Ethan, and something in his face softened by 1 degree the way good men look at other men when they wish the next part didn't have to happen. "Mr. Whitfield," he said, "you're not under arrest at this moment. You are, however, part of an investigation. You will not contact your mother's bank. You will not step foot on her property. You will not ask her to sign anything. If you do, I will personally walk you into a cell for violating a protective order I will have on my desk before lunch." Ethan nodded too fast. He started, then stopped, because there wasn't a version of that sentence that didn't make the truth worse. "Okay," he said, small. He looked at me like he had woken from a long dream and hated the room. "Mom, I'm here," I said, and I let him have that much, because love is not the opposite of boundaries. It's what they're made for. Kayla's mouth was a hard, beautiful line. "This is ridiculous," she said. "We're family." "Business, Lightman. Family is why I'm not pressing charges for trespass this minute," I answered. "Law is why I'm pressing them for everything else." Harper moved us down off the overlook in tidy steps. Statements, a form that made my hands shake anyway, a promise that an investigator would contact me about the CBL file. Mia squeezed my shoulder and told me to drink water like I was the patient now. Abby texted a thumbs-up emoji the moment my bundle hit her inbox, followed by a second message, "Lockdown complete." I pictured her at a desk somewhere, clicking boxes closed like windows in a storm. The week unfolded with the boring, beautiful precision of a plan. Harper's team pulled financial records, froze anything with my name on it to me alone, and filed a no-trespass order that lived on my fridge beside a crooked photo of Mark, pretending to be impressed by a trout. A legal aid clinic connected me to an attorney who spoke plain English and didn't care how much history tried to drag its feet. We updated our wills with someone who didn't share last names with anyone in our phones and set up a trust that required 2 people we actually trust. Mr. Ruiz came by with a fresh notary stamp and a bag of oranges. He watched my hand as I signed and nodded like a man approving a bridge. Kayla found herself busy with calls she couldn't soften. Ethan sat on my porch steps one afternoon without coming inside, shoulders curled like punctuation, and told me he'd started going to a counselor who didn't let him arrange the furniture of his story to make it prettier. He said, "I'm sorry," in 3 separate sentences, and for once his eyes stayed on mine long enough to see whether the words landed. I told him sorry is a receipt, not a discount. I told him I hoped he would earn it. Mark healed the way good men do, irritable, grateful, nostalgic for a body that behaved, making jokes too early, and then sleeping like a door closed just right. Doctor. Park called once to check on him and left a voicemail that sounded like a neighbor leaning over the fence. Mia stopped by a community meeting with a sign-up sheet for winter trail safety and bullied me into teaching the log it or lose it portion. "You're bossy when you're right," she said, and I said thank you like it was a medal. I stood in the rec center 2 weeks later with the Moss ledger propped open on a lectern and a stack of free one-page checklists Abby had printed. Family Incident, Log 10 Essentials. I told 20 strangers the thing I'd learned under sodium lights and wind, that boundaries aren't revenge, they're repairs, that repairs need receipts, that a mic and a notebook are not paranoia, they're company. It wasn't a sermon. It was a recipe. On the last page of the ledger, I wrote in ink that will outlast the paper, case, closed but kept. Then I closed the cover and pressed my palm to the cloth, like you press a wound when it's finally stopped bleeding. Some nights the wind still lifts the hair at my temple, and I feel the rail under my hand again. I don't try to unfeel it. I hold the feeling until it remembers it's just a story about a day that taught me how to live the rest of them. And when a form with the word urgent shows up in my mailbox, I make tea, call Abby, and set my timer for 72 hours. Here's the truth. This story keeps whispering. Love without boundaries becomes silence, and silence is expensive. Or, as Nora learns, I don't argue, I document. When things feel foggy, choose procedure over panic. Boundaries aren't about punishment, they're about keeping everyone inside the truth. A small mic and a little green ledger changed the arc of a family, not because they were fancy, but because they made reality visible. You don't need a cliff to practice this. You need a pen, a pause, and a policy. If someone pushes urgency, remember, time is not rude, it's protective. Use it. And if you've made mistakes before, covered for someone, signed too fast, there's no shame in learning out loud today. Doable steps you can take this week. US friendly. Write your minimum boundaries in 3 lines, for example, no signatures in crisis, 72-hour review, independent counsel, tape it by your desk, start a family incident, log, date, time, who said what was asked, how you felt, next step, 1 entry. That's enough to begin. Practice 3. See, calm, collect, confirm, before you sign or agree to access beneficiaries. Use the 7 questions before you sign: who benefits, who drafted, how to revoke, where originals live, what's the smallest version, what happens if I wait. Loop 1 trusted person, your banker, physician, or a neutral friend before any urgent form. This is not legal advice. Seek professional help when needed. If this resonated, drop 1 sentence you'll tell yourself on a weekday in the comments. Then download the free 1-page Family Incident Log 10 Essentials in the description and keep it with your bills. If you want more stories that turn chaos into process, subscribe and stay close. Quote to keep: boundaries aren't revenge, they're repairs, and repairs need receipts. He's in Hevdest, wishing you a quiet night on a boundary you chose.